Well, we have 17 participants at this point. Welcome, everybody. We start this evening's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will read. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Oh, Mark, you know what? Without control, I can't change the slide. I'm not able to operate my PowerPoint. Mark? I think I need to, oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to have our meeting invocation led by ASIS.
Okay, as we gather together this evening to share knowledge with one another that will help us fulfill our obligation as security professionals, we are reminded that the global pandemic is still impacting our lives. For some of us, it has hit close to home, and we have experienced firsthand the impact of the virus, with someone close to us having been infected, or worse yet, having succumbed to the virus. For the rest of us, we have all been affected in many other ways, and our daily lives and routines have been changed for the foreseeable future. As we continue to cope with the new normal, may we remember to keep all those who are in need in our thoughts and prayer. We continue to thank and pray for those essential workers who have put us before themselves. We must also continue to support the recommendations of our scientists, and throughout our work and community lives, continue to set example of good social behavior that can lead us on the path to a better tomorrow. May God bless and watch over all of us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Al. Okay. So let's spend a minute talking about protocol. As Mark had asked, we would like everybody to please mute their microphones during the meeting now. And when somebody's interested in asking a question, which we strongly encourage, what we would ask you to do is use the chat button. For questions to the speaker, you can chat to me. But you're welcome to use the chat to have communication with the entire meeting group, or just any individual within the meeting. So I think this is no speaker topic business. Sorry about that, Mark Gaudette. you are.
Oh, so am I done? Can I go home now, or?
Okay. Next, what I'd like to do is ask anybody who is attending the meeting who is displaying a telephone number to let us know, and we would just love to be able to take attendance for the meeting. So, and that would please be sent to our Co-Vice Chair, Mark Landini. Thank you, Mark. Okay. Next, I'd like to talk about some very exciting upcoming meetings which we have planned. So also this month, which will take place on the 28th, very exciting topic on community policing and the use of force. The speaker who will be interviewed will be interviewed by Al Sparacco. Who's been a member of the Brookfield Police Commission for many, many years and also chaired that commission. Josh just retired recently from the Fairfield Police Department, and this promises to be absolutely excellent topic, which we're doing under the auspices of our Young Professionals group. In August, we will take a break. We won't have a regular monthly meeting on the 13th, but we will continue in August with our Women in Security meetings. That will be on the speaker will be Lorraine Consiglio, who is the Director of Global Security for Cigna. Also very exciting. Looking forward into September, we have two planned topics. The first one being education in the age of pandemic. And we're hoping to take stock in where we are at in education, both in the public sector and private sector. And then later in September, we're going to take a look at the life safety codes. We have an NFPA employee lining up as our speaker for that. That promises to be very interesting. The life safety codes, which is NFPA 101, is the framework for what is required in different types of occupancies, which could be anything, including residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, assembly. So this is the first step in deciding what has to be done to implement life safety. It's the base guideline, which then steers us in directions like NFPA 72, which is the National Fire Alarm and Signaling Code, and NFPA 70, which is the electrical code. So this will be another fascinating topic. And stay tuned. Our website is very current. It's been updated almost on a daily basis. And you can find these meetings under the events and chapter events. I'd also encourage everyone to look at also under the events tab, our sister agencies. As an example, the Connecticut chapter has a golf outing event, which we have a lot of information on. And of course, the best way to do it is to look at the link to their chapter to register, and encourage everyone to support our sister chapter in Connecticut. Next, I'm going to ask Adelino DeSantos, who is our treasurer, to just quickly review the treasurer's report, and then we are going to, using the chat feature, ask for a vote. So we look for two participants, one to make a motion to accept the treasurer's report, one to second it, and then using the chat box, we can send our votes again to Mark Landini. Okay, so Adelino.
Good evening, everyone. That's the end of June. Treasury report, our beginning balance as of June 1st was $10,295.35. We had no income for the month. We do have expenses, Constant Contact, which is our email service, Start Chapter, who we were using as a web service provider, and Wix, who is also part of the web service provider. Total expenses for the month is $129.66, leaving us with $10,165.69. Those, can I get a motion to for acceptance?
And that would be through the chat box, folks. I'm going to make a motion to approve. I'd like to get a second now, please. Mr. Acker has seconded.
Second.
So now, weigh in. Yes, Ron has also seconded it. Here. majority. We've got an approval here. Right? Maybe it would just take a minute to share that we're going to be in leadership discussing ways to start having some income in this age of Zoom meetings. One current possibility is we are looking for sponsors for the website. And you can go to the website. There is information on how to be a corporate sponsor. It's a great deal. I think $350 is what it is. I know that the New York City chapter is charging over $1,000 for a year sponsorship, so we've got a great deal here. So you can consider that. And, beyond that, we're also looking at charging a small fee for the meeting, maybe something like $10 or $5. We'll discuss leadership. So we are working on that. Okay. Next, what I'd like to do is just quickly talk about an initiative for collaboration with other chapters, regional and beyond. Just like to share that in the last 2 months, we have had the chairpersons of the Toronto chapter and also the Hudson Valley chapter as guest speakers. Wonderful. And at our last month's meeting, we actually had the president of our global board of directors speak to our group. So for those of you attending the meeting in other chapters, welcome you to reach out to me or anyone in the leadership. And let's talk about how we can help each other. We would love to be able to put on our website any events being promoted by other chapters. Likewise, love to have our meetings shared by the same sister chapters. At this time, what I would like to do is ask anybody attending the meeting to share with Ron Coleman any languages which you speak. What we would like to do is on our website, sure that's not how you spell language. Anyway, if you wouldn't mind sending a chat message to Ron, we'd like to put up on our website languages which are spoken to try to encourage people from around the world to contact us and have us be a resource for them. And lastly, if anybody has any thoughts, ideas, suggestions within the attendance of the meeting, I'd love to hear your comments. So send that to me in the chat room. And now it's time for our keynote speaker, Mark Gaudette, CPP. Mark is a ASIS superstar. He is the regional VP for New England, which is the region that we are in. Very excited to have Mark's leadership. Also, be our guest speaker today. Mark is the Director of Security of Big Y Supermarket, which is a very large chain throughout New England. I'd like to say that I'm a customer of Big Y, and it's one of the cleanest supermarkets I've ever shopped in. So, and now, if anybody has any questions, actually, I originally suggested that, but it's fine. You can send them to Mark as well, and then we can ask those questions of Mark at the end of his presentation. So at this time now, I would like to have Mark take over the screen. I'm going to hit stop share. Mark, if you could take over share screen.
Okay, I guess, can I do that without hosting, Mark?
Thank you. Why don't you give it a try?
No, let's see what happens. No,
You're going to have to make him the host, please.
So I
Click on
click
Mark.
on and make host. Do you want to change host to Mark? Yeah, yes.
There we go. Okay, well, I see it. We're good to go. Let's see how this works out.
Thank you.
All right, whoops. Why it started in the middle, I don't know. Can you guys see the screen?
No,
Not yet.
not yet, Mark.
Any visibility?
No, not yet.
No?
Mhm.
Hang on, let me try this again. This your screen, I'm trying it. About now?
Yes. You got to
Okay,
hit
good.
your
Yep. All right, we good?
boom.
All right. Well, first, thank you for having me, guys. I want to put on my SRV hat for just a second and talk a little bit about region and what's been going on. First, I want to commend you guys. As I get to travel virtually to all the regions from Maine to Virginia, I want to tell you, you guys are one of the chapters leading the way on meetings and virtual engagement. And although this, a year ago, I would have said this was not our preferred way of having a meeting. It's certainly a necessity now. And as we move forward, I think even when things return to whatever normal is going to be, I think this is going to be a bigger part of our association and how we engage each other. And one of the great parts about this, it's taught us a lesson, is that now we can reach a little further geographically, right? Now we can go to a meeting in Maryland, we can go to a meeting in Maine without leaving our home. So it's going to be kind of cool. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is GSX Plus. As everybody knows, I'm sure by now, our conference is going to be completely virtual. It's going to be 5 days. I think the reason it was stretched out to 5 days is to make sure that all those educational opportunities are available to everybody. As I mentioned earlier, to the smaller group, Maureen and Fuller and I attended a virtual global retail crime summit today for 8 hours, 8+ hours. And I want to tell you that today went by so quickly that I can foresee that with the group of talented people we have at ASIS, it's going to be a fantastic conference. When I did this one today, it was kind of a test run to say, geez, can we really enjoy that kind of form of communication? But I think we're going to have a great time at ASIS. We're still going to have all those educational opportunities. Our supplier partners are going to be there virtually, so we'll still have that opportunity for the meet and greets. I guess the only thing we won't get is to go out and have a drink and some dinner afterwards. But otherwise, I think it's going to be a great opportunity. So I look forward to it. So anyway, I guess we'll get down to what today's all about. Today we're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and how it affects our supply chain from the grocery store, from the distributor to your household. So who would have thought that we'd ever have a toilet paper shortage, right? Here in New England, we're pretty accustomed to panic buying and the products affected. I mean, every time the weather forecasters predict snow, folks rush out to buy up milk, bread, and water as if the world's going to end tomorrow. And then this happens. I still have no idea why everybody thought that toilet paper was the thing they were going to need. I mean, I drove straight to the liquor store, stocked up, and they seemed pretty happy to see me there. And on the subject of alcohol, contrary to some of the internet rumors, the sales of Corona beer in the U.S. are up over 5%. And overall sales of alcohol beverages are up 9%. So what's going on? The World Health Organization stated that the wholesale live market in the central Chinese city of Wuhan played a role in the outbreak of the coronavirus, either as a source, as possibly an amplifying setting. And most virus researchers say it's virtually no chance that the coronavirus was released as a result of a laboratory accident in China or anywhere else. But it really doesn't matter right now how it got here. For at least the immediate future, we need to manage the risk of the virus in our everyday lives. And who's in charge? The CDC and the World Health Organization have a long history of collaboration and partnership. CDC's Influenza Division has served as a WHO collaborating center for surveillance, epidemiology, and the control of influenza in Atlanta, Georgia since 1956. And it's the largest global research and reference center for supporting public health interventions to control, prevent pandemic and seasonal influenza. The U.S. contributes about 1/5 of the World Health Organization's total budget. So during this presentation, we're going to be referencing CDC guidelines. Individual states have the responsibility for the response to the COVID-19 emergency for public health and safety. Executive orders were issued regularly by governors of both Connecticut and Massachusetts, as well as other states across the country, issuing guidelines for businesses and communities. But even as the governor's executive orders were deemed the rule of law, many communities' health departments and police departments created their own standards and regulations. These address subjects from occupancy limits, face masks, special signage, social distancing, to hours of operations and more, most often being even more restrictive than the state guidelines. And where did everybody go? For some organizations, the first impact of coronavirus was challenges with the labor resources. There was little understood regarding the infection rates, how the disease was transmitted, or what the risk factors were, leading to many sick calls that were driven by fear of the unknown. Early on, there were serious employee and family concerns about coming to work. A new, much more liberal view of the standard attendance policy had to be enacted by organizations, both for the peace of mind and safety of the associates, as well as to guarantee to keep them employed in the future. Daycare establishments were ordered closed. And the standard fallback, grandma and grandpa, they're out, as they're the highest risk group of infection for serious illness. As a result, the child care issue put an additional strain on the workforce. And let's not forget that as the schools closed down, parents became the teachers and are trying to tackle homeschooling. My guess is that a lot of parents up very late at night Googling compound fractions and how to congregate a sentence. And as these parents are pulling double and triple duty as mom and dad, teachers and playmates, the hours of the day are shrinking. But no problem, you can just work from home. That should be pretty easy. You know, if you think the guy in the cube next to you is distracting, try a 4-year-old with no shortage of energy. You have to ask, is your organization ready? How will telemarketing affect productivity and the ability to deliver your service? Does your infrastructure support increase in traffic and with many more people working from home? Can your employees perform the essential functions of their jobs while telecommuting? Do your employees have proper technology to work from home? And what are the additional cyber risks to your organization by employees working from home on their own personal equipment? These are all factors that will impact the supply of products and services. And what about the new rules? Rules for your customers, rules for your staff. Now, when I go shopping, I have to bring my reading glasses just so I don't do the wrong thing. CDC guidance in the early phases of the pandemic was recommending that people who are well should not wear a face mask to protect themselves from infection. As the CDC continued to study the spread and the effects of the coronavirus across the U.S., around the first week of April, they started to recommend wearing cloth face coverings in public settings where other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain, for example, grocery stores and pharmacies. So, some people got pretty creative, and I think others might have been trying to make a statement. Part of the challenge in the beginning stages of the pandemic is that there wasn't even enough PPE in the supply chain for the medical field, never mind grocery and convenience store clerks. As the demand suddenly rose, many manufacturers such as John Deere, Ford, GM, Apple, and others retooled their production lines to produce PPE. If you've been watching the news in the last couple of days, you've seen that major corporations such as Kroger's, Kohl's, CVS, and Walmart are now mandating the wearing of masks if their customers want to be served. And now we have to stay 6 feet apart. Okay, I kind of like this one. I think after the pandemic, I'm going to continue to enforce that personally. And now everybody's telling us how to wash our hands. Wash your hands for at least 20 seconds, sing 2 verses of Happy Birthday. Kind of makes you wonder whatever you've been doing up till now, right? And for all those hoarders, guess what? You own that truckload of toilet paper. No one is taking it back. In the one-way aisles, they seem pretty straightforward, right? But we've all been trained our whole lifetime how to navigate the stores, and it's hard to change now. Heck, the businesses even merchandise in a particular way because they know where you're going to be from aisle to aisle as you complete your shopping. And sanitizing all those touch points is another challenge. If you're like me, now you're noticing everything you touch, from a doorknob to a light switch, even your cell phone. And you can just forget about the senior shopping chaos. They show up 45 minutes before the store opens, jammed together in clusters while shaking hands and hugging each other. So much for social distancing. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I can tell you I'm getting really sick of the aroma of hand sanitizer. And everywhere you go, the person across from you is now behind a plexiglass shield. The bag thing is even more confusing. Single-use plastic bags are bad. They're destroying the earth and ruining the world. You must buy reusable bags. No, wait. Reusable bags are bad. They're going to give us the coronavirus. Quick, bring back those great single-use bags. And as of last week, Connecticut and now Massachusetts, guess what? Single-use plastic bags are bad. They're destroying the earth and ruining the world. You must buy reusable bags. If that's not confusing enough, we'll sell you a bag for 10 cents, a paper bag. So in normal times, aka our lives up until now, supply chain management always looked pretty much the same. You've got logistics, strategy, planning, operations, procurement, and product life cycle. It's usually pretty simple. The farmer plants and grows the vegetables. The cows and pigs are raised for protein. Chickens lay the eggs. Then the raw materials go to a processing plant where it's prepared for customer consumption, shipped off to a distribution center, and delivered to your local supermarket. Then you go shopping, bring home your stuff and stock it in your pantry. The money that we paid at the store goes back through the supply chain to be shared by all its entities. But what happens when there's a break in the supply chain? As all of you know very well by now, as soon as the pandemic started, there was an immediate wave of hoarding. In a recent poll, 85% of those polled blamed the shortages of hand sanitizer and toilet paper on other shoppers. I'm guessing most of those folks didn't look in the mirror too closely. If you think of it as an air bubble in a pipe, hoarding behavior creates a void in the normal flow of the supply chain, leaving periods of time with no product availability. This problem is then magnified as it's unpredictable and can't be projected. So often labor resources needed to handle and distribute the goods aren't necessarily aligned when a product returns into the supply chain, resulting in this all too common view of the paper aisle in your local store. The void in the supply chain then led to an either voluntary or involuntary reduction of SKUs or stock keeping units that manufacturers can offer on their product line. A typical example is that pre-virus, B&M Baked Beans had 25 SKU selections on the shelf. Post-virus, they're only offering 5. Many other manufacturers have significantly reduced the number of offerings of their products line and are focused on the production in manufacturing of a limited number of core items. Kind of makes you wonder if Bernie Sanders was right after all when he asked, why do we use so many deodorant choices? Wait a minute, we should probably leave that one alone. By the way, that was my best Bernie Sanders imitation. Meat packing and processing plants have become a hotbed of COVID-19 infections, and it's not just in the U.S. that's experiencing a large COVID-19 clusters. Outbreaks have also appeared in meat packing plants around the world. According to the CDC's latest report, the chief risk to meat packers comes from being in prolonged close proximity to other workers. 1,000 people might work in a single 8-hour shift standing shoulder to shoulder as carcasses whiz by on hooks and conveyor belts. As a result, in the U.S., we experienced plant closings for a short period of time. Smithfield Foods shut down its South Dakota plant after 230 employees had tested positive. Tyson Foods suspended its operation at processing plants in Indiana and Iowa. And National Beef was forced to close down operations at both its Iowa and Pennsylvania plants after dozens of workers became infected. Although these temporary closings did put some pressure on the protein supply chain, it was really minimal. But it became an issue of what came first, the chicken or the egg. As media outlets began to forecast upcoming beef, pork, and poultry shortages. I love the tagline at the bottom of the screen. Coronavirus, facts, not fear. But they weren't really presenting many facts. And the national news warning of shortages in protein supply chain actually had an adverse effect, again forcing retailers to place limits on the sale of these products. And as the fear buying and hoarding began again, it resulted in millions of pounds of protein disappearing from the supply chain. One of the first changes you probably observed on your shopping trip after this pandemic began was the elimination of bulk or self-serve sections. In order to provide customers what they were looking for and needed, retailers began to pre-package the bulk and self-serve foods into individual packages. The unexpected challenge then became the stress of the packaging supply chain as companies all across the nation began to request 20 and 30 times their usual supply order. Cargo theft and other crimes is another area that puts pressure on the supply chain. In the early days of the stressed supply chain, the focus was on getting more product into the pipeline and less attention was being paid to cargo security. An analysis of cargo or truck theft during the COVID-19 shows an increase of 49% over the same period in 2019. These stolen products may end up elsewhere in the supply chain and often at an inflated cost. And at the retail level, there's been a huge uptick in organized retail crime during COVID-19 pandemic. There's also a spike in external crime due to the many people who were forced into unemployment, making it challenging for them to provide for their families. Customer shopping patterns are different. Security and store staff are overworked and shorthanded. The court systems are closed down, while most police departments won't respond to anything under a felony level. To top it all off, everyone's wearing a mask, making video identification almost impossible. Bad guys have really figured this out. Now we're getting a little more creative with our use of technology in identifying make, model, plate, numbers of the bad guys' vehicles in order to pursue future court filings against them. And for the first time, it appeared that our food supply chain was vulnerable. Food security, as defined by the United Nations Committee on World Food Security, means that all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. In the United States, we haven't often had the discussion around food security, as most of us, obtaining vast amounts of foods has never really been a problem. And certainly, compared to other parts of the world, we often waste our food. During this pandemic, another invisible supply chain that was affected is food banks. Demand for food assistance is rising at an extraordinary rate, just as the nation's food banks are being struck by shortages of both donated food and volunteer workers. The Food Market Institute reports that normally over one-fifth of retailers donate over 1 million pounds of food annually, and more than 1/3 donate at least 100,000 pounds. In lieu of the unavailable foods, many retailers have been donating cash to the food banks to assist them during these trying times. What are the challenges in getting the product back in the supply chain? As some governments banned ports of entry for container ships bringing food and supplies, and limitations on crew changes were enforced, it caused additional serious disruption to the flow of trade. Receiving inbound distribution shipments were slowed down due to reduced staffing, either as a result of infection or staff members calling out due to fear of infection. Workflow safety changes required drivers to remain in their tractors while the trailer was being unloaded. And all these factors contributed to a reduction of outbound product to the retail distribution chain. Again, due to staffing issues at many distribution centers, selecting and transportation of product becomes a major challenge. Selector absenteeism runs high and the number of available truck drivers is reduced. And much of the product that you see in the shelf of your local supermarket or convenience store is delivered by what we call DSD, or direct store delivery vendors. These folks are independent, self-employed small business owners that deliver and service such products as cookies, chips, snacks, and your favorite bread. They typically travel from location to location, servicing many stores throughout a single day. Some DSD vendors opted to service their locations overnight to reduce their risk of exposure to customers. Many of these vendors had a hard business decision to make about exposure to risk and the difficulties of social distancing, and some of the decisions made impacted your choice of product when you went shopping. Another challenge to getting product to the shelf throughout the supply chain was the increase in unemployment benefits, with the stimulus package of $600 in addition to regular benefits. This made it difficult for some employees to choose to return to work when they could net more money by staying home. Many employers adopted an increased hourly hazard pay or bonus money to entice essential workers to stay in the job. As COVID wore on and people continued to cook and consume more meals at home, the product life cycle of the supply chain began to be affected. In many parts of the world, vegetable growing season is very short, with a short window. In New England, the pandemic hit just before the start of the farming season, which enabled folks in the grocery industry to take advantage of partnering with local farmers to keep the shelf stocked with fresh vegetables without any transportation problems. But as demand increased, the supply of raw materials shrunk. We saw the same example in the spike of the cost of goods for eggs, as chickens couldn't produce at the rate of consumption. With people working from home and kids not being able to attend school, customers began to stock up their home freezers with items like frozen pizza, vegetables, and dinners. And so just a few weeks into the pandemic, another unexpected break in the supply chain was for baking products like flour, sugar, and yeast, as families started to enjoy more home-baked snacks. I want to tell you, this is my favorite slide, though. Look at those brownies and that apple pie. And a recent phenomenon, just when we thought we had experienced all the supply chain shortages, now stores are running out of change and can't get needed reserves from the bank. This is caused by both the mint being closed down and the fact that a lot less people are now paying cash. As the availability of some products that we regularly buy was reduced, we often had to select a more expensive brand or package size that was still available, giving some folks the mistaken impression that there was price gouging happening. In a market research study, more than 96% of the respondents said they couldn't get a specific product they wanted. 60% of consumers reported that they've gone without some products or services, and 47% said they paid more for something than they normally would. With restaurants and schools being closed down, distributors that supply those organizations found themselves with warehouses full of perishable products and a labor force with no work. Partnering with these organizations for products, staffing, transportation, and equipment allowed for an opportunity to save product and jobs. As traditional supply avenues for retail supermarkets such as chicken and pork became scarce, retailers were able to tap into the inventory in the supply chain that had been targeted for restaurants, bars, and schools and repackage those products for retail consumption. Many retailers struck deals directly with manufacturers to purchase full truckloads of product directly to get the products to the consumer quicker and relieve some of that pressure on the supply chain. So, all these steps were taken to exploit the supply chain, and still no toilet paper. So what does your future look like for feeding your family? Will it be like the Jetsons? You make a selection and the pizza flies itself to your house? Well, maybe sometime soon, but first, I think we'll start engaging more e-commerce. We've all gotten a lot more comfortable with the concept of e-commerce during this pandemic, and as we move forward, it's safe to assume that more and more of our daily transactions will be virtual. Most of us, at some time or another, have ordered something from Amazon. But how many people listening today have, for the first time, had their groceries delivered to their doorsteps utilizing one of the food delivery services to get some takeout? It's a pretty good bet that most of us had made purchases in these ways that previously we would have been a little uncomfortable with. I'm not sure about everybody in this meeting, but my wife and I are really starting to enjoy the convenience of e-commerce, although it is driving my dog crazy every time somebody knocks on the door. As a result, even the new supply chain is impacted by a virus. These companies scrambled to staff new hires to meet the demand. Delivery windows became wider and wider. Employees of these organizations demanded and received more PPE and policy implementation to keep them safe and gained higher wages. In the very near future, when you do return back to the brick and mortar shopping, you can expect almost touchless experience, as there's going to be a reduction of man scanning at the point of sale and a rollout of technology that will allow you to use your smartphone to scan your items as you select them in your cart and automatically have payment sent via your smartphone. Soon, robotic micro-fulfillment centers will be operational, where you simply place your order on your tablet, your phone, or your laptop, and then drive to a regional center nearest you to pick up your order curbside. Many brick and mortar retailers who are already under a lot of pressure may not weather the storm moving forward. And this may again affect our normal supply chain and availability of goods. As we move forward, many of the lessons from COVID-19 will be examined as we plot our future supply chain from suppliers to manufacturers to distribution. You will see a more diversified distribution network, so the struggles of one manufacturer or supplier won't have as great an impact on our total supply chain as we view our future supply chain from a different angle. And with that, questions? Now, do I have to try to give this back to you guys?
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
But let's let me get to the questions because I'm looking at them in the chat. So, Mark, who is responsible for all the PPE, plastic barriers, and other protective items for employees and customers?
So yeah, that's a good question. Each individual retailer is responsible, and as you look back at the progression from early March till now, some retailers responded a lot more quickly than others, and the ones that responded more quickly have gotten a lot higher customer confidence and satisfaction, because they feel as if the retailer is doing everything they can to protect them. So what you saw is throughout many companies was a total all hands on deck team effort to get things done in an extraordinarily short amount of time. Things that usually take a month took 2 days. And when we talk about supply chain for a short time, plexiglass was another problem because everybody was ordering it.
Okay, our second question is about a question asking what metrics will drive Big Y's policies going forward with respect to COVID-19?
Well, let's speak in general term of all retailers or all retail supermarket, and a lot has been learned throughout this experience. And in my own organization, we met at least 3 times a week, and we're on the phone probably every day. We had a COVID task force of about 10 folks from different departments throughout the company, and we've documented pretty clearly and concisely all the steps along the way so that we can have a better defense as we move forward. I mean, we all have business continuity plans, but I'm going to be honest with you, our business continuity plan didn't really look at the long-term effects of a pandemic. And pandemic was part of our plan, but since it's been 100 years since we had one, nobody really paid a lot of attention to it. We were more focused on weather events or terrorism or social events and things like that. Things that would start and end in a day or two. So going 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months was not something we planned for. So we've been documenting all along the steps so that we can plan better in the future. And if there is a resurgence, let's say in flu season next year, I think all retailers are going to be better prepared. And because the governments know a little bit about it, they'll be less reactionary and make better logical choices.
All right, Mark, our next question has to do with how you're managing the increase in shoplifting from a policy perspective. is there a new way to deter the theft?
Yeah, that's a really good question because it's kind of the wild, wild west out there. As I mentioned, courts are closed, cops aren't responding. So with us right now, and I can only speak to our company, is it's a catch and release program. So we're trying to deter, recover. We're identifying, the bad players. We're not particularly optimistic that processing them to the courts is going to do us any good because keep in mind when the courts do open, there's going to be such an onslaught of cases filed that the bureaucracy of the court systems are just going to sweep them all. So we're trying to do more about deterrence, and that's a good question also because as we move towards contactless experience for the customer and frictionless experience, we're going to have more opportunity for shoplifting. For example, self checks that already present that challenge, as well as the scan and go. So we're going to, the mitigation techniques that we use to prevent shoplifting aren't going to look like they are today. It's not going to be the undercover store detective. It's kind of going to be probably more of the, I don't want to say the Walmart greeter, but it's going to be more continuous interaction with the customer.
Okay, great. So what do you see as the permanent supply chain changes?
I think that, well, the answer is twofold. One, that this epidemic is going to cause a long-term effect on the supply chain. And I'm talking a year, 2 years out. So there's going to be some changes. As I mentioned about the SKU utilization, you're going to see manufacturers offering less choices. Now that could, people could say that's good or bad. One of the downsides of that is, listen, at some point the manufacturer is going to offer the choices they make the most money on. If they go from 25 to 5 SKUs. The other thing I think, again, as I mentioned, I think that you're going to see less dependence on single stream distribution, where in the past, a retailer and a distributor kind of marry up together and stay that way, and they're sole distribution. You're going to see less of that. You're going to see more and more dependency on local production, be it produce or whatever product that's being sold, whether it's soda pop, whatever it is, there's going to be more local interaction.
Okay, and our final question has to do with credit cards, and we all heard about the touchless transactions. Does it affect how it appears on the point of service for tracking investigations, or does that not matter? Is it making pass out harder to detect for video review?
It depends on what your operation looks like. Now, the organization I work for, we have a really high percentage of loyalty card use. So even the people who are being dishonest are using their loyalty card because they want a reduction in price on other items. The other thing is, with the credit card information, you still get the last 4. So you can still identify people through video going back in time, archive video, to see if it's the same person, and you may get some clues around that. As I mentioned in the presentation, we're getting a lot more creative at following that customer out of the store to their car or into the store when they drove in, trying to catch them when they drove into the lot and try to capture plate number or identifying information that way. So again, I think we all have to look at asset protection and loss prevention as kind of a work in progress. The pandemic has really changed the way we're going to do business on the mitigation side. And the customer's engagement, with the product is going to change 100%. Before we tried to keep the customer, we wanted to control the product from the customer to the POS, and now the customer is going to have control of that. So everything's going to change in any asset protection director or VP who isn't ready to make that change quickly is going to fall behind quickly.
One member in the chat is asking if you have detectives or store employees going into the parking lot to actually get a visual on license plates.
That's not my preferred method. We never want to put I would never advocate putting an employee in harm's way. We can always, first off, the bad guys are coming back tomorrow. We'll get them the next day.
It sounds like that's hard in the moment.
Yeah, but I think, listen, the technology's gotten better. When I'm getting to be an old guy. When I first got in this business, we're using VHS tapes. Then we switched to analog video. We thought that was the bomb. And now, you look at the analog video versus IP video, and you're like, how the hell do we recognize anybody in those things? Well, with the IP video and the right megapixel cameras and the right positioning in the parking lots, you can identify a lot of plates in activity.
And I just like to plug some of the police departments. They have some technology. We visited the Hartford Police Department's command center, and it was incredible how they could get a side view of a license plate and then kind of bend it to get the whole reading of every letter in the license plate. It was incredible.
Yeah, I don't have that technology. You got to increase my budget.
Right. Absolutely. So, Mark, if you could turn the control over and make me the host, that'd be awesome.
Let me see if I have that.
Just click on me, and then you click on the dots and turn it over, because we're seeing your screen. You can stop sharing too.
Yeah. Got to get you. Look at the dots. Hang on. Make host. Yes.
Oh, there you go.
All right, I got to figure out how to stop sharing now.
So Felix back here. Mark, I just want to say that was really fantastic. Learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else did. Certainly, we got a lot of great questions.
Trying to get rid of the screen, guys. I can't figure it out.
It's all right. I think I can do it.
Yeah, if you could do it, it'd be better. I apparently don't have the skills.
Give me a second. Go ahead, Felix. Wrap it up.
All right. Well, as I was saying, I think we're all very grateful for Mark's wonderful presentation. Certainly indicates that we're just at the beginning of a very new paradigm for living in this world of ours here, not just in our country, but around the world. I think that's a real good indicator that this organization of ours has got a fantastic role and mission to that end. I want to really thank everyone for participating in the meeting and supporting our chapter. Always looking forward to hearing from all of you with comments, suggestions, and questions, ideas for speaker topics. That, wish everybody a safe life, basically, because you're not going anywhere. You're already home. So take care, everyone, and thanks again for attending.